Hello, folks. It is now another Effluvium to present to you. Trying to think of something witty to say there, but sometimes I'm just out of wit. Time for another Effluvium. Time for another live stream in a podcast format. We have 4 people tuned in at the moment. So we just started. It's 1:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have a wonderful guest. We have the Fragrance Matt, who many of you may know from his YouTube channel that he has been uploading videos for quite some time. And I discovered him a number of years ago when researching some lesser known classic fragrances. And I saw that he had some wonderful videos on them and great insight, great sense of humor. So I am elated to have him as a special guest for this installment. And I hope that we have Rachel joining us for this. There was an emergency that came up, nothing to be alarmed, but she does have a child, and children fall ill sometimes, but it seems like he is just fine. Her son, Winston, and yeah, hopefully we will have her joining us at some point during the stream. We have no updates as of yet, so it may just be me and Matt for much of the live stream. And I'm going to pick his brain with a few questions, interview him a bit. I'm not going to throw too many hardball questions, so don't worry, Matt. I don't do that to good people. I do that to people that I question. I question their validity, question their integrity. So I like to pick their brain, but no, we're good friends. So I don't need to do anything of the sort. Hello there, Paroli. Good to have you here. We have 8 people tuned in. If you are tuned in and you're not shy, just drop a note in the messages section to let us know that you're present. We have Andre Petra or Andre Peter. Hi, gang. Looking forward to this. You two are among the greatest fragrance reviewers. Pour le connoisseur. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that a great deal, Andre. Thank you. All right. So I think that without further ado, I don't want to keep Matt. I was going to say, I don't want to keep Fragrance Matt in the backstage for too long in the green room. We're going to bring him in and we'll get the conversation started. There's nothing specific in the agenda. We're just going to chat about the things that we love. And yeah, let's just get things started here. All right. We're going to bring Matt in. Hi.
Hello, Joseph. What's up, man?
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining us for an Effluvium.
No, thank you. It's great to be a part of this. It feels really good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have Miguel who just tuned in here. And his scent of the day is Cyberis or Cibaris. Cyberis by Puiig. Lovely choice. One that I think both Matt and I do appreciate. And I've often compared that to sort of a progenitor to what we would see with a Balenciaga Pour Homme, because I think that the same perfumer for each of those, a lovely one that's less discussed in circles. Yeah. So tell me, Matt, I often ask this question to everyone. Where did your fragrance journey begin? When did you realize that you were actually interested in perfumes and fragrance?
Probably about 2 years, literally about 2 years before starting my YouTube channel. And so probably about 10 years ago, I just went into a department store and I noticed the Dreamer by Versace just sitting there. And I sampled it on a piece of card, and I just remember thinking to myself, wow, this is a fragrance. This is something that people wear. Because at the time, I knew nothing really about it and whatnot. So it was a real big deal for me to smell a fragrance for the first time. And then after that, I just ended up spending about 3.5 hours in this department store, Phoenix, actually. And I just ended up smelling so many different types of fragrances that my mind was pretty much blown. And since then, I've just collected. That's pretty much what it started as. I started collecting, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to do some reviews. And then noticed other people were doing reviews online. There was actually quite a few people who don't really do it anymore. I actually forget his name. I'll have to think of his name and let you know later in the stream. But it was just it was like discovering a new piece of art that I knew I should have discovered much earlier. To be fair, because I love smelling things, so just a real big deal, you know.
I love how just one chance encounter with something can just burgeon a whole,
Hmm.
love affair with a certain art, which I
Yeah.
do consider fragrance to be as much of an art as a craft. And the
Hmm.
fact that you picked up that one bottle and you were enamored, and it just went from there,
Yeah.
just sort of like opened
Hmm.
up the rabbit hole. Um,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
just discovering everything. The whole process is just fascinating to me, just
Hmm.
developing that relationship with fragrance.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good choice, Versace Dreamer, because I
Yeah.
remember a long time ago I smelled that one, and I did have a bottle, and then I ran out of it, and then I got a new. Yeah, that's the version I have. Yes.
Hmm.
Are we going to nerd out about that? We
Yeah.
have to hit that certain versions that are necessary. Yeah, that is one that
Hmm.
I'm really not somebody who is always talking about things being a shadow of their former self or a shell of their former
Yeah.
self, and
Yeah.
I am much more forgiving of reformulations for various reasons. But I do think that that is
Hmm.
one that if you can seek out an older version, it'd be worth your while. Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Well,
Definitely.
what is
Yeah.
it about the Dreamer that struck with you, that reeled you in?
Uh Honestly, probably the bottle design. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just, but don't get me wrong, there are many more bottle designs in the fragrance world that I do prefer. I mean, bottle design isn't as important for me personally. It's
mhm,
more about the fragrance. But if the fragrance has a nice bottle design, then it does make it more worthwhile.
right.
But the thing is with a Dreamer, it gives off this almost like,
Yeah,
I don't know, like it should exist in like a temple somewhere
yeah.
or in like a palace somewhere, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it does look like it would be some sort of installation in a palatial environment, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
almost like kind of a column or yeah, what do
Hmm.
you call it? Like
An
uh,
obelisk.
an obelisk. Yes, exactly. Like yeah, sort of
Is that right?
yeah, a monument of some sort, a
Yeah,
monolith, as it were.
yeah. Yes. Yes, and that's the vibe I get with it, you know. And I think the Medusa head on the front just captivated me, to be fair. You know, I don't when I walked in there, I was just I didn't even know where to start. And the
Yeah,
Dreamer was just there, right at the end. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give that a smell. And my first impressions of it were, it smells like the name, you know, which is something that I talk about quite a bit in my videos. Which it's strange. I don't know when a fragrance is able to have such a captivating name like the Dreamer and create a smell that matches the name, which I do think it's been really well done here. But I don't know. I'm fascinated by that whole aspect. You know,
yeah, yeah.
not a lot of people tend to pick up on that side of stuff.
No,
You know.
I think that it's worth exploring. It's worth
Hmm.
exploring. Yeah, I think a lot of us have a tendency to rely too much on the information that's already given to us, and we lean on that. And we might list the notes pyramid, or
Hmm.
the concept behind it, and the concepts are great. And the notes pyramids make for a great guide, especially when we're learning how to detect notes. But ultimately,
Hmm. Hmm.
looking beyond that and trying to avoid any kind of biases for the information that's given to us, and just go with what our own intuition is with a
Hmm.
fragrance. That's when we can really develop a deeper relationship with it.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think that you've demonstrated that with the descriptions that you give for a lot of the fragrances that you love. Like, of course, you are going to mention, you know, the style of the fragrance and the notes and stuff, but
Hmm.
you dig a little bit deeper, and there's an
Hmm.
authenticity to that. I think that that's what sets you
Yes.
apart from maybe somebody who feels like they have to stick with a script and talk about the
Hmm.
notes and talk about the performance, etc.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
about like a connection with the fragrance itself. And I
Hmm.
think that it was aptly named, but I also like the idea of, you know, a fragrance, you know, sort of taking us somewhere and allowing us to create our own story around it,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Exactly.
what is it about it as far as olfactorily about the dreamer that really ignites you and makes you stimulated?
Okay. Probably the whole powderiness of it, the whole, well,
Mm,
especially as it starts to dry down, the sweetness of it,
mhm,
the powderiness. I feel like the rose that I feel like the rose definitely creates this deep sensualness to it, but the lily creates the sweetness. But especially as it starts to dry down, the tonka just lovely. But I mean, I don't know, it just creates this whole like comforting, calm feel, which with the name like the Dreamer,
mm,
you could it's whether it's a fragrance you want to wear to bed and then go to sleep and dream away. I don't know whether or not you're quite imaginative and you
mhm,
think of distant world. I don't know. I don't know. That's I've
mm.
kind of always thought that way, if I'm honest with
Yeah,
you, about
yeah,
fragrances. Sometimes they transport me to different realms. It's weird,
yeah. That's awesome.
but that's how I think. That's how I think.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that really stands out to me, the note. See, I mean, I can't do an exact recall of the note pyramid, but what does struck me is the clary sage. There's clary sage in it,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think that that can be a polarizing note, and that's why certain people are grow fond of it, and other people can't really. They don't really know what to make out of it, because clary sage is a very aromatic note, and it has these um, sharp facets to it. And the sharp, I love things that it can be sharp as long as they're not
Hmm.
synthetic sharp. But
Yeah.
it's a very sharp sort of herbal bitterness at the top, but then it smooths into like sort of like almost like a tea like and almost
Mm.
tobacco like quality clary
Mm.
sage. And that's why it really works well with, you know, aromatic scents and tobacco scents. And I think there's a lot of it used there. I'm not sure how much natural clary sage depending upon the budget, but
That's
from
it.
my knowledge with the essential oil isn't one of the most expensive of essential oils, sort of mid, you know, moderate as far as how much the cost would be for a perfumer to use it. So I would gather there's a pretty decent amount of it even in the newer bottles. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's
Hmm.
to me. If I were to do a, you know, I do these theme weeks. If I were to do a clary sage theme week, the Dreamer would be
Hmm.
one of them because to me that's
Okay.
the standout in it. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's like a standout note to you in the
Yeah,
dream.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's
Interesting.
interesting too is like, you know, our noses are so you know, each olfactory bulb that a human has is unique to them. So they're going to pick up on certain things that are more forward than the next person.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
hear with some people that, you know, the tonka is just so forward with it. But yeah, for me it's a clary sage. It's really kind of
Okay.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool. No, I like that. I like that. I've just always found it such a warm, powdery fragrance
Yeah.
that I've always loved. I've always loved it. I have always
Nice.
loved the dream. But I've
So
got so many fragrances here. So,
oh, please.
um,
Is there one at your side that you recall discovering around that same time? That, you know, not necessarily the same day, but
no,
early.
no. But
Oh, you
I,
do?
I do actually have quite a few
Nice.
here. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, nice.
The one that I would say it's a very simple choice, but I didn't want to start with something so extravagant.
Yeah.
I didn't want to start with something that was even that expensive either. So I
Right.
went with
Right.
something that was considered a favorite, especially for the autumn, fall, winter time. Uh,
Hmm.
Burberry London. Uh,
Oh,
this
cozy.
one,
Yeah.
you know what? It's gorgeous
Hmm.
in my mind. I absolutely adore it. I just wish it lasted a little bit longer. That's the only issue. But longevity is another thing altogether. In terms of the smell, it's just absolutely gorgeous. We may even talk about that again in this live stream. But of course,
Oh
all of
yeah,
us.
we could definitely revisit it. That's definitely one that reminds me of the time between Thanksgiving and Christmas time.
Yeah,
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 really a
yeah.
festive and cozy and warm sort of fragrance.
It really is, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like it just resonates with a lot of people, and I bought it for that reason alone. But over the years, I have developed a strong love for it, particularly with the whole tobacco and cinnamon. And it's actually got quite a bit of depth to it for what would be considered a really cheap fragrance, especially nowadays. I mean, Burberry London's been around for over 20 years now, I believe.
Mhm.
Might even be, I don't know, 2005 maybe, something like that.
I think it was around that
But
time.
yeah,
Kevin
but
Kevin
something like
Conwell, I too have the dreamer, and I can't believe you're on the air. This is really exciting. Whether this is
that. So
that is,
Kevin,
it's exciting to have Matt. It's exciting to do this earlier for me and get some viewers from the time zones that are further ahead from me. But thank you very much,
yeah,
Kevin,
I
for the
think of
comment
course.
there. What do you have in store for us next from your early discoveries?
Well, one particular type of fragrance that I've been developing a bit of a fondness for is Animalics.
Ah, yes.
And you know what it is? I actually reviewed this fragrance the other day, but I haven't put it on my channel yet. It's just a random vintage fragrance from my collection
Hmm.
that I developed a fondness for before I even bought it. Strangely enough, I ended up looking at commercials for this. I ended up trying to look for blogs online about it. Found a few,
Hmm.
and they were very helpful, to be honest. So I was able to discover what kind of fragrance this was blindly, and then I bought one. And this is Gambler by Jovan.
Oh, look at that.
Now, now this bottle sadly is scratched to bits
Hmm.
due to its age, but the juice is it's filled up literally right to the top, and it's
And
forgive
if
me for the statement.
no, no, that's oh no, that story of my life. I'm always having to use like a
Yeah,
little cloth to get rid of this. But
yeah.
I notice also there's a very nice color to that glass. Like at first it would seem to be like an opaque black color, but it looks like it's almost like a dark ambery color, the glass on the
Well,
bottle.
yeah, yeah. That's it. The back and sides are orange glass. It's almost like a. It actually looks like a medicine bottle of some sort.
Oh,
And
sort of like, yeah, like
you
those dark amber bottles that keep the light out. Perfect
yeah,
for fragrance.
it is. To be honest, I think that's why this fragrance is so well preserved. I'm actually really excited to get my review for this. Actually, so uh, because I actually really like this fragrance. Have you smelled this one before, Joseph?
That one actually, I've never smelled it. I'm not familiar
It's
with the. I immediately have Kenny Rogers playing in my head because of the
yeah,
name.
yeah. Likewise, every time. Can't help it. It's just one of those things. But the smell itself, honestly, brilliant, and it's very. It's almost like a dirty barnyard type smell.
Interesting.
Honestly,
Oh,
but it has it has the whole Jovan musk character to it,
yeah.
which does actually make it work. It
Hmm.
smells like your typical quintessential 1970s gentleman, who has the gold
Mm.
chain and massive beard, maybe he just has long hair. It's that kind of fragrance, even though it's called gambling, you'd think it'd be a suit and tie type of fragrance. But honestly, the fragrance itself is amazing stuff. And for a cologne, very long lasting as well. I love it.
And that's been discontinued for a very long time. Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
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 How would it be difficult to locate it if somebody were to seek
Well,
it out?
well, that's the thing. I mean, every time I actually buy on eBay, and I know there's a bit of
Yeah.
a stigma on eBay at the moment. A lot of people's,
Really?
well, I've noticed, especially on Instagram, a lot of people actually message me and they'll ask things like, well, where do you actually get your fragrances from?
Yeah.
Because I don't trust most websites. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you, that is a scary feeling to have. It's a normal feeling to have. Anybody can go through that. But what I do is I go on eBay. I'm a huge eBay shopper, but I
Hmm.
always message sellers first.
Right.
And I actually developed a bit of a friendship with some of them. And some of the people are
Yeah.
awesome, awesome people. And the person who actually sold me this guy called Paul, and he is a fragrance collector. I haven't actually talked to Paul in a long time. He's an awesome guy. And he sold me this, and it was never used. It
Hmm.
was in pristine condition, but I've actually caused it to be pretty, uh, not exactly the most cleanest bottle in the world. But I am in the garage after all. It's almost like a shed. It's yeah, not the cleanest. So,
Don't worry
but
about
it
it.
is. It's hard to find. So I would definitely say eBay. Probably,
Yeah. Yeah. I,
it's
I,
probably the best place.
truthfully, I get a lot of what I collect from eBay as well. It's just a matter of, like, exactly like you say, developing a familiarity with the sellers, getting to know them, sending them messages, getting their vibe. And also, some of the more common sense things like looking at the feedback and
It
looking at how
helps.
long they've been a seller.
Exactly.
And, I don't want to discriminate against those who may be in other certain parts of the world and if they're
No.
selling, but to just be careful if you're buying from certain places where the post may not be as reliable.
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
but I don't have any issues with I'm surprised that people. What do people say? Do they say like, "Oh, you should never buy from eBay"? What are they concerned about?
Yeah,
You're getting ripped off, or
yeah, pretty much. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
like people actually give me their own experiences where they've
yeah, yeah,
went to buy a fragrance and it hasn't turned up, or it hasn't. They've sent them the wrong fragrance, or
yeah.
or it's turned up broken or whatnot. The glasses have smashed and whatnot, the bottle smashed.
Well,
So
that's a
yeah,
risk that you have to take anyways, no matter where
mhm,
it's being shipped from or from what
exactly.
marketplace or
Yeah,
seller. So, that I don't think that's necessarily an eBay thing per se. I think that, it
yeah,
depends on a few different things. It depends on whether the seller is adequately packing it for protection, so
yeah,
the fragile bottles don't get broken, and
yeah.
also we're at the mercy of whatever postal service, if they're not
Mhm.
handling these
Exactly.
packages. So yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have any. I mean, I will freely admit that a lot of what I've collected over the years has been from eBay. I've also used a site that's here in the US. I don't think it's outside the US, Mercari. There's Etsy. But the thing with
Okay.
Etsy, I'm not sure if you've noticed with Etsy. I think a lot of people who sell in Etsy know the demand, and the prices end up being a little bit more so. Um,
Right.
but I've broken down and purchased some things from Etsy when it's just it had taken so long for me to find something.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. But that's
Yeah,
another
try
thing
it.
that's important too is patience,
Yeah,
not and
yeah,
not just the first one that comes up after 6 months. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one you buy if they're
yeah.
listing it for an ungodly amount of money. That
Mhm,
maybe it just takes another 6 months, and you're going to find one of those sellers who's not as
mhm.
aware of the demand for a particular fragrance, and they'll sell it to you
Yeah,
for $50 or something.
yeah,
That's how I've gotten a lot of
exactly.
my gems. Um,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
would love to try Gambler actually. There
It's
is,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. I actually love all of those drugstore brands. I do.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing actually 2 weeks worth of reviews in November, just a few weeks of
Oh,
just
cool.
drugstore
Cool.
fragrances. Some that are still in production, others that have been discontinued that used to be ubiquitous at one time,
Mhm, mhm.
and yeah, yeah, I have a place in my heart for those, the cheap and cheerful, the ones
Yeah,
that really, honestly, if you're thinking about what was in the ether at a certain time and place, that was what you were
yeah,
smelling most of the time,
yeah.
especially if you were growing up working class. If
Mhm.
you were growing up working class, blue collar, or even middle class, you weren't smelling too many things in the way of
No.
very high end fragrances that were being
Yeah.
sold on the counters of here we
Mhm.
have Bloomingdale's, but I'm sure you have some
Okay.
examples there.
Yeah,
Um,
well, we have all sorts here.
no, those are high end department stores. Um,
Mhm.
but I just I think they deserve a lot more appreciation. And those are the ones
Yeah,
that I
they do.
have the most memory connections with. You know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Likewise,
So what's
you
the
know.
next one you have for us?
Okay, well, this is again, this is another cheapie, and I want to show this one because the first time I ever, well, I actually discovered this from, I was actually, weirdly enough, I was actually watching some old commercials on YouTube, and I discovered this one from that uh, compilation video, and this is Elizabeth Taylor's Passion.
Ah, yes. That's an example. That's another great example of the drugstore fragrance. That
Yeah.
yeah. I had an aunt that wore that, and she wore that, and then her fancy one was Poison. But she would go between the two of them. I guess she also liked the color purple. So go
Okay.
figure. Both
Well,
bottles
there you
pink.
go. Yeah, yeah.
But I
There you
remember
go.
she loved that one. Yeah. And
It's
that one's
really, really.
definitely unisex these days. I
Oh,
mean, without a
yeah,
doubt.
yeah. I'm about halfway through actually this fall. I wear it quite a bit. It's so good. It's very different to the men's version, of course, but
Yes.
the
Yes.
reason I like this is because it's, of course, Elizabeth Taylor. She's a legend.
Yeah.
Her
Yeah.
perfumes, some of them are actually worth admiring. Some of them are a little bit, but
Yeah, like
this one,
white diamonds. It's
White Diamonds, is a bit too harsh
a
in
little
my.
too over the top even for my taste, and I can get
Yeah,
into over the top, but that's a little much for me.
yeah,
A little too
yeah.
screechy. But I
Mhm.
think that yeah, that passion is much it's much smoother.
It is, but it's just jam packed. It's
It
so
is
many
though. Yeah,
notes.
I love those kitchen sink type fragrances that were
Yeah.
popular in the mid to late 80s.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. There's so many of them. Labras Coram. I don't know if you've tried this one before.
I've seen that bottle before. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I sure can, my friend. This is. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right. It's called Kyriaz. Trying to get the light to focus here. Come on. Come on. There. And it comes from Remy Latour, who well known for creating their cigar fragrances.
Yeah, yeah.
This one comes from 1994, so it's. I tell you something, this is awesome. But like you said, it's that kitchen sink type fragrance that's up there with Kuros, Labras
Right,
Coram,
right.
Bally Masculine. There's
I
so
love that
many.
bottle.
It's cool, isn't it? It's really cool.
You're
Like,
inspiring me to grab a couple of bottles over here too that are in a similar vein. So would you say
please
that
do.
that would be sort of a what's the word I'm looking for? A descendant of the Kuros Antaeus Jewel Holy Trinity, um, but not too derivative. Not too.
No, no, it's funny you say that because I mean, here he is. It is very interesting. It sounds very similar to Kuros itself.
Yeah, and it
So
has the white bottle, and it looks
yeah,
almost
yeah,
like yeah.
yeah. This is there's a lot of strong similarities to it. But I actually looked it up, and it the word Kyrios is actually inspired by a Greek name, a man's Greek name, boy, I should say, male name. But yeah, so I don't actually know what the name is. I actually forget. But the smell of this is just amazing. It's nothing like Kuros, but it's very woody. There's a lot of cyclamen in here.
Cyclamen. So it would have
Yeah.
that kind of cyclamen to me, knowing the smell of the flowers, not the ones that you
Hmm.
buy in a supermarket, because
No.
the fragrance has been bred out of those. But there are
Hmm.
wild cyclamen and certain cyclamen you can get at a florist that have that kind of waxy, dusty, vaguely lily of the valley, vaguely
Hmm.
kind
Hmm.
of yeah. It's a very unique kind of smell. Yeah, I like when it appears as a note in fragrances.
Yeah. Likewise. Likewise. It is very different.
There's actually an aldehyde called cyclamen aldehyde used by perfumers to evoke that characteristic. Sort of, they call it.
Oh,
It's a type of floralizer, much like lilial is a floralizer.
okay,
R.I.P.
yeah.
R.I.P. lilial, since it can't be used anymore. But yeah, there's interesting floralizers like that that give that sort of impression of a particular type of flower. And that one is
Mm.
cyclamen aldehyde. So when you were talking about Kyrias, it kind of it reminded me of this one, which is Etienne Egner silver. This
Now that is
is
a gem I need to smell.
silver. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's so scarce. Like this is a
Mhm.
lovely, splash bottle. I don't always need
Nice.
an atomizer. I could always decant or
Of
just
course.
sometimes I'll just use like a little a dropper, and I'll just apply the dropper. I always
Of
give this
course.
pro tip for people: if you want your
Yeah.
fragrances to last, and you're not wearing them all the time, to not apply directly, with your fingers, because the oils from your fingers can sort of sully up the fragrance itself. So if you do not
Mhm.
want to just decant and you want to still use it from the bottle, just use like a dropper and take some of it
Mhm.
out and then apply it that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just decant it. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is, everybody, hails the hallowed Kuros. But for me, this is sort of like my Kuros. Like I one would argue this was sort of like an also ran or a me too, sort of like Igner's answer to Kuros. But I find it to be a lot less harsh. And
Mm.
it's almost sort of like a cross between Kuros and those more herbal, uh, outdoorsy kind of sense like Devon or Yatagan kind of combined together,
Ooh, okay.
interestingly enough. So it's sort of this Fougere Chypre hybrid to
Mm.
it. And it's quite potent as well. The lovely milk
Okay.
glass. And yeah, and sadly it's not hang there's not too many of them floating around. So if you do
Shame.
find this, yeah, I mean, whether it's a splash or what have you, or even a mini, I just encourage people to get minis first off. Like, minis are important.
They certainly
Ways of
are.
introducing oneself to a fragrance. Don't blind buy a
Mm.
full bottle because you may
No.
actually dislike it. Get the mini. And
Uh-huh.
I know you have plenty of wonderful minis.
I
If you
do
want to
actually.
segue into minis, minis are a fun topic.
Yes, they are. They certainly are. I mean, I've got some. I did have a lot more, but because I've moved house and that over the years, I actually think I've lost a lot of it in storage. But this
Yep.
is speaking of Etienne Agner, I think it's how you pronounce the name.
Egner, yeah.
Agner. This is Free Life.
Free life, yeah. That's from that vicinity of lovely lavender slash patchouli
Yeah.
slash rosy kind of earthy scents. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I say that that's
Zeno.
kind of like the, yeah, like Xeno, like, but of their own twist on it. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
nice. And Nick mentioned sport fragrance. I have not smelled sport fragrance. I've never smelled,
Mm.
what's the other one that's really highly coveted? The super fragrance.
Yeah.
Super fragrance for men, super fragrance for women. I haven't smelled those either. I would definitely want to sample them first. Those are not the kinds of things to blind buy
Mm-hmm.
because those are, oh
No.
God, those
No.
bottles go for exorbitant amount of money. Tell us
No.
a little bit more about the free life that you have, though.
Yeah. Well, the Free Life. I definitely. I mean, just looking at this bottle design, what captivated me to it was, believe it or not, I don't know why, but I was watching Back to the Future at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and the look of the bottle just reminds me of something that you'd find in a DeLorean.
Yes, that
It's
style of
awesome.
the bottle. Yeah, I love that
Yeah,
you point out the presentation as a big part of it too. And I'd be
yeah,
lying if I
yeah.
said that I wasn't attracted to the presentation of these fragrances as well. They're
Yeah.
the bottle designs, and even I've started to get interested in the designers of the bottles, and they have their whole herb as well of like what
Oh,
bottles they
yeah.
designed for different houses. So
Of course, it's a separate
yeah,
art. Really, it's a separate
yeah,
art
yeah.
from the fragrance. So, but this stuff is beautiful. Again, I didn't know what to expect from it because I looked it up on Fragrantica. I mean, at the time, Fragrantica was it was like an old version of Fragrantica, so it wasn't as informative and whatnot. So it listed the notes, and then you just have reviews. It didn't give you whatnot. I don't like to look on Fragrantica too much, but I do find it very helpful, if I'm honest. And I would encourage people to just look on there to get like tips and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
No.
to
Yeah.
also look beyond Fragrantica as well. So that's important as well.
Fragrantica, base notes, Profumo,
Yeah,
great blogs as well. You know, I
yeah,
learned a
they are.
lot from the different blogs. Yeah. Very
See,
nice.
it smells like straight. Like it's you definitely get that lavender in this. It's very strong. Kind of scared to apply it. I
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
never really wear it, but wow, it's interesting, because I've got this. It's a lavender spray, and you spray it on your pillows and your bed before you go to bed, and it's supposed to relax you and whatnot.
Hmm.
And it actually smells like that, but there's definitely this sandalwood edge to it at the same time.
Hmm.
And the sandalwood actually smells very harsh in this. So, but the lavender definitely smoothens it out a bit. That's a good
Hmm.
word. But it's beautiful. It's definitely old school, and it's a shame that it's not being made anymore because just to have a bigger version of this bottle would be awesome. Sorry, I'm literally
Yeah. Yeah.
not able to focus my camera properly. I apologize for that. But awesome stuff. I really like it. Definitely get Xeno from it. A lot of people say it
Yeah.
smells almost like Heritage by
I could see
Galan,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, but I don't know. It's definitely more close to Xeno. I'm not sure if Xeno has a tobacco note in it, but this does, I believe, and it does create a slight smokiness as well. So it's
Mm.
definitely a fragrance with a lot of layers. Layers that nowadays you probably wouldn't find in a new fragrance. But as it starts to settle down, you obviously get like I find that if you let a fragrance settle for more than at least an hour, you do get the full potential of the fragrance. At least that's what I think. A lot of people might have their own opinions, which is fine. But that's just what I think. And with this, it dries down beautifully. It's just I love it. Have you do you own a bottle of this, Joseph?
I have a sample. I have just a
Okay.
sample of it, graciously gifted to me by Duncan, who often shows up in the chat as famous YouTuber, and he sent
Cool,
me
cool.
a sample of it. Should last me for a while because I have to
Awesome.
be choosy after a while when collecting. I
Yeah.
can't have them all. You know, if I have a
You're
sample, that might be just good enough for me to appreciate. So yeah.
so your if you don't mind me, your collection must be just huge. Is
Oh
it?
yeah,
Because I think
it
I've got a
is.
lot of. I feel like I've got a lot of fragrances, but then I think of some of the gems that you post, and I'm just like, wow, look at that, look at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
right there.
I've
You know,
reached that plateau at this point. I've become a lot more
amazing.
fastidious about what enters the collection and what ends up just being something I appreciate in sample form, or
That's it.
and also like I get sent samples and I try to tell people like that's so kind of you, but I don't even have time to smell what I already have.
Yeah.
It's like
No, that's it.
I have a whole backlog.
Yeah.
But
So you
yeah,
got a full.
it's a
Sorry, go on.
pretty no, it's okay. I mean, it's a pretty big collection, but when you get to a certain point, I think, unless there's some other reason for the collecting, which is understandable too, you realize like you're coming around to like similar themes after a while.
Yeah.
It's like this is lovely, but I can recall that this reminds me of A, B, C, and D, and then
Hmm.
that starts to happen, and
Yeah.
so you end up getting to a point where it's necessary to pare down,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm sort of like right now I have a very small list of things that I'd like to add, very small compared to what it used to. It's kind of a relief.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of paring down, which brings me this speaking of paring down, right now, for folks who are tuned in, the buy me a coffee offer that I'm doing, 6 cups equals a sample pack, because of so many samples and I don't know what to do with them. 12 cups will give you 4 full bottle fragrances in a grab bag. You can't request which ones. Surprise, grab bag, 4, and plus a sample pack. Bear in mind that each cup is $5. So 6 cups equals a sample pack, 12 cups equals a 4 full bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. Unfortunately, at this time, US only, please. And the link is on a pinned note there. You can access the link directly, buymeacoffee.com/JosephKolbP. And also, folks, don't forget to hit the like button. It helps us out here. It helps with the algorithm so that other people see this archived stream of us having a lovely conversation on fragrance. So just smash that like button, if you will. I'm leaving the floor to you. I want you to just keep sharing stuff with us. This is kind of fun.
You got it. Yeah, man, you got it. So to the fine gentleman who actually mentioned Sybaris by, how do you even pronounce the name of this
It's
house?
Spanish. Yeah, it's Puiig. Puiig.
Puiig. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. So Antonio Puiig. This is Sybaris. It's absolutely just amazing. Honey animalics with just I need to actually respray this, so please bear with me. I've got some cards which I will give it a try off, but the smell of this is beautiful. It's completely different to the likes of Quorum or even because this is a house which people, if people ever, it's not really known about personally. People know about Quorum because it's kind of a drugstore scent.
Right. It was a huge commercial success, still in production.
Yeah. But it has, I don't think it's made the company because I believe the first fragrance from this house was Agua Brava.
Agua Brava way back when in the 50s. Yeah, that was the first one.
That's right. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. I've actually got a
and there's even some interesting long discontinued fragrances that were marketed to women from Puiig as well that I have debated whether or not to pick up, but I mean, they have some mixed reviews. What little reviews are available for these more obscure fragrances, but are pretty interesting to me that were released in the 60s and 70s. But I just have them on my saved searches, and if they come up for cheap, I'll buy a bottle or a sample or something.
That's exactly it.
That's the way to do it. Yeah, just I'm not going to buy it without really knowing much about it, you know.
No, exactly. And I find if I discover a new fragrance, the first thing I think of is, right, for Grandica, let's go for it. Most of the time I find it, but if I at least find one person who's reviewed it, I'm eternally grateful. Even though it may not be the best descriptive, I mean, most of the time they're fairly good reviews. I mean, and sometimes you may get people who are like, yeah, they may just put one review and it's like, this smells great. I wish it would come back. The smell.
That just doesn't tell you very much.
It doesn't tell you anything about the scent itself. Yeah, exactly. So they're not very.
Some people like to just do comments. They just comment. They don't really get into detail. Or my favorite are the so-called reviews where it's just like a rating, like which is the most subjective thing in the world, and with no context, it doesn't tell you anything. Like somebody will just leave a review and it's 4 out of 10. Tell us why.
Yeah.
They don't tell you why.
I don't know.
I see that a lot. Miguel, thank you for educating us. Thank you for educating us, Miguel.
Definitely.
Miguel says Puiig. I think I'm pronouncing it. Miguel, if you want to clarify exactly the correct spelling of this, what just so happens to be a Catalan surname, looks like I'm pretty close with the pronunciation. But if you want to just correct me a little bit more so that I can
well do it man.
Exactly correct. I know a lot of people have different ways of saying it. I've heard Puiig. I've heard Puiig. Yeah. All different kinds. I'm a stickler for pronunciation. Like if somebody tells me I'm pronouncing something wrong, I want to correct it. There's some people who are like, no, I'm just going to say it my own way. But I want to make sure I'm authentic with the pronunciation, just out of respect for it. Yeah, totally.
That's exactly it.
I have one to share here. If we take a dip into the lady pond here, because I love my ladies marketed fragrances. La Nuit de Paco Rabanne. which this has been compared to Schiaparelli's Shocking, but it's sort of an 80s version of it. And I would say
Okay.
that this is shocking as well in the fact that it is a
Wow.
very deep animalic chypre, honey and civet and overripened florals and musky and sweaty and sultry. Lovely, lovely stuff. Are you familiar with this one, Matt?
I've heard of it. I know that the marketing campaign, you get the posters for this fragrance back in the day were absolutely stunning.
I think I want to
Um,
spray some on me.
yeah,
My
go
scent of the
for it.
morning has dried down just enough. So
Cool, cool.
wow, this is like next level stuff. I, it's so intoxicating.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's something about having these like really like saturated white florals soaking
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
honey
Hmm.
and like resins and
Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. I completely imagine. I'm trying to imagine what that must smell like, and I'm getting.
Yeah.
It sounds gorgeous. Again, these are the kind of fragrances that I'm trying to get into.
Yeah, I would argue. I would agree actually with Nick that this is. A lot of people say this is like a real skank monster, but I think that it's just subtly animalic. I don't think that it's really one of those like super
Mm.
skanky ones.
Hmm.
But then again, you have to enjoy a honey note, and I know honey seems to be
Yeah,
interpreted by certain noses differently, and some
that's
people
it.
pick up on things that I don't pick up. When people talk about pissiness, I don't really pick up. That's not what my nose really interprets.
Hmm.
Pissy. It's like it makes it sound so unattractive.
No,
Pissy
but
white florals.
perfect description, really, though, when you think about it. You
But
know,
it is
it is.
beautiful.
Uh, But a fragrance, I wish I could have smelled that fragrance, but I did get this one not long ago. I know that you're familiar with this. This is Teatro alla Scala by
Yeah.
Krizia.
Oh, lucky you! Look at that. Yes, I am
But
quite familiar.
yeah, it's beautiful stuff. I had a feeling that you'd know about this. It's
No.
just it's a relic. It's a gem. But
Mm.
unfortunately, this was a really the bottle broke when it came in delivery.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, and the writing on the front here, which is supposed to say Krizia, came off. So, but it's beautiful.
Oh, at the base
Abs
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to say Krizia along here,
Yeah.
but it's faded off over time, I guess. It's
No,
splash bottles, so this is going to be difficult.
now, I always want to give credit where it's due for discovering that one, and that's Donna Sandu, a nose. Um, she actually educated me on the whole Krizia brand because I was very unfamiliar with it, and I
Yeah,
learned about Teatro alla Scala and K the Krizia and
yeah,
Krizia Uomo and Krizia Crazy.
crazy.
There's
Yeah,
a lot of good ones from the house, but that one is spectacular.
it is.
That is opulent.
Beeswax. Beeswax.
Yes. Yeah.
It's opulent again, like I said. It's grand.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's just massively elegant to the point
Mm-hmm.
where you you think you're transported to the theater itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I wish I knew who designed this because
Mm.
don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful, but there's definitely this category within the 80s which a lot of these fragrances belong in.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another one here, Chere 2 by
Ah, yeah,
Jean-Louis
yeah,
Gain.
yeah.
Uh,
Jean-Louis Chappelle, yeah.
Chere, yeah. It's very similar stuff, but not exactly the same. So that's something that I'm trying to get into as well about understanding the different dynamics of fragrances that are quite similar, you know? That makes sense.
I'm partial to the original Jean-Louis Charlet from the late
Oh,
70s.
I've heard good things about that stuff.
Green Beauty,
Yeah.
Hyacinth, Galbanum,
Mm.
lovely. That's I have quite an affinity for that kind of style, the green sense of the
Likewise.
60s through the late 70s. You didn't really see them again and as much nearly in the 80s. Actually, what was interesting in the 80s is the usage of galbanum would be juxtaposed with vanilla and resins. And that's where you started to get a very interesting new style, which would come in things like Mousse Cartier and Obsession and Moschino and fragrances like that. Crazy Kritzia would be a later addition to that, and I love that juxtaposition between the bitter green and the sweet vanilla and resins. Those,
Right.
yeah, I love that
That's
stuff.
right. Because
So.
Crazy Kritzia, that's 91, isn't it?
Yeah, it was kind of a later version of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was coming around a
Definitely.
time where there were different trends. I love the idea of actually putting together like a visual timeline of how a lot of these
Oh,
are
that'd
kind
be
of
good.
interconnected, and then you have some that you can sort of branch off as sort of like different houses versions of the same style, how they're similar, how they're
Exactly.
different. You could do like a whole diagram of it. That'd be kind of a cool
Yeah.
project. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that definitely would be cool. That definitely would be awesome. You'll have to do that, man.
Yeah, yeah,
You'll have to try and do
that would
that.
be fun. Kevin Conwell asks, could you and your guest please explain to me how you train your nose to pick out the different elements in the colognes and fragrances that you have? Um, well, I can tell you sort of my own experience because I have a background actually in studying perfumery and perfume making. So I have an edge on that because I've smelled a lot of raw materials. So it's a lot easier for me. I had that head start with it. And I've mentioned in the past that I've put that on the back burner. That's on hiatus. I'm still debating whether to revisit that in whatever capacity. So yeah, it involves. I have smelled many different botanical essential oils and absolutes, synthetics of all different types, musks,
Awesome.
all different kinds of
Cool.
components. So that gives me a leg up as far as being able to identify things in scent. As far as things that I'm not familiar with, I just have to there's not too much actually at this point. I'm not boasting. It's just not too many things
No, no,
that
no.
I haven't smelled as far as the materials. So
Mhm.
anything outside of that is just, I think, for somebody who hasn't, because there are a lot of people who have to kind of identify things without having,
Mhm.
the raw materials for reference, is to just take some fragrances that are similar as far as like they all have like the standout note, the main note in
Mhm.
it, compare them, and then you'll start
Mhm.
to pick up that way, or just buy some little sample vials of essential oils and materials too. So that's my answer. Matt, tell me how you've helped yourself out in identifying notes.
Well, I would say personally, best way to like if you want to really identify notes, the best way to start is with notes that everybody is familiar with. So start out with
Yes.
citruses is a really good way to start
Yeah.
because you can start out. You can start out. Didn't say that right. You can start off with lemon, which if you smell a lemon, you're like, oh yeah, it smells great. That's a lemon, Which of course it's just a very diverse smell, flavor, and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, there's people outside. Uh,
Okay.
and then you've also got other citruses as well, which
Right.
you discover and you're like, whoa, I didn't know that existed. Like persimmon. What is persimmon? I've sampled a few fragrances with that note in it, and I think I've been
Mm-hmm.
able to discover what I think it is. But again, it just takes sampling different fragrances and trying to imagine what you think personally it smells like. So, for example, my lemon that I smell will not smell like your lemon that you're smelling. Everyone's nose is different, so the way
Yeah.
to do it is just to use your imagination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Picture the smell, picture the note, even, and really try to. It's like a puzzle piece. pull the fragrance apart and just try to really get in there and try and just imagine what you really get and try and link it
Yeah.
with what the notes really are. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sounds strange, but that's what I do anyway. It
It
seems to
just
work.
takes sniffing experience. You learn as you
Yeah,
go along.
yeah.
But if people want to have the raw materials for reference, I always recommend visit a market or a pharmacy, a natural food store. They'll have things like this. They'll have the essential oils. You could buy a couple of them. Not all of them are expensive. You could get a small amount of vetiver, patchouli. Um, you can get different. This is another one that's obvious, and I guess I just take for granted because I grew up in in households where there was a lot of cooking and a lot of spices and herbs. But if
Mm,
you're not
okay.
familiar with spices and herbs, you could just buy some and smell
Yeah,
them, or
exactly.
get like, or just go to if they sell them in bulk, you can get like small amounts of them and
That's
just
it.
just analyze them and study them, and then you'll be able to identify those.
Mhm.
And I think it just makes it a lot easier to say, if you want to focus on a particular type of note, then you really know what you're looking for. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
yeah, and then like you said, Matt, it's a lot of just like you're training your nose by just smelling all different
Mhm.
things, and you start to pick up on these common lines between different fragrances, and that's when you really identify the rose, and you identify the
Mhm.
jasmine, and the smell
Mhm.
things too, like in the springtime,
Mhm.
whatever time of year, and that it's a flower that has a scent to it, smell it. Like,
Yeah,
you see
exactly.
there's narcissus flowers. I know they're low
Yeah.
to the ground and people might be like, wow, he really likes flowers, but sniff them.
Yeah,
Like you'll understand the scent of narcissus or hyacinth and
exactly.
stuff like that.
It is
Speaking of,
interesting. It's a very
yeah,
interesting journey, I feel like. And I was actually just about to say also, not to interrupt you by any means. Um, it's like you've got to have an interest in a particular note to
mhm,
really understand it. So it
yeah,
has to be an interest.
yeah,
Otherwise, if you discover a note and then move on to something else, you're going to get yourself confused. And you know, el- most people don't really care about notes when it comes to perfume. Some people just buy them for for leisure. To
yeah,
literally just
yeah,
spray when they go out, or they don't think about the fragrance and whatnot. They wear it in the morning, and then when they're done with it, they just throw it on their dresser for the next day. You know what I mean? There's no actual love for it. So not
yeah,
everybody has um, this obsession, I would say.
yeah.
So you've got to have a fondness for it. It's the same with notes.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of relationship somebody wants to have with fragrance. They're the average person who are not frag heads like ourselves. Many of us who
Hmm.
are tuned in fall into that category. We're a small percentage of the actual population, a very small percentage, and most people, they smell something, they like it, and that's good enough for them.
Exactly.
And then there are some who really start to enjoy fragrance on a certain level that they want to know a little bit more about it, and that's when they
Yeah,
start paying
that's it.
attention to all the other stuff. And
Exactly.
so you got
Yeah.
to ask yourself, like, well, how well do I want to familiarize myself with perfume? Do
Hmm.
I want to? Do I see in my future that I might want to be a reviewer or writer of fragrance, or I want to start a YouTube channel or a TikTok or
Hmm.
whatever social media and create
Hmm.
content surrounding fragrance? And my advice to them is don't put the cart before the horse, because you might end up making videos where, you know, you have to, you also, and I think you'll agree with me, Matt, that you have to be
Mm.
humble about it too, and admit that you
Yeah.
don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know
Oh yeah.
yet. Like, I'm learning just along with everybody else.
No,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's
That's exactly
my
what I mean.
advice for
Yeah.
people who are curious, like, about, like,
Hmm.
how do you do this and how can I do this, is think about, whether or not you have that kind of strong relationship to fragrance to
Hmm.
begin with, because if you do, there are ways to get a deeper understanding of
Broaden it.
this, broaden it, and there's so many resources
Yeah.
available to you out there, whether it's like we were talking about, picking up some raw materials for reference, or reading blogs, reading Fragrantica articles, reading base notes,
Exactly.
looking what other people write about and share. So, hey, Just Ed Light, great to see you, my friend. Adonis, the mayor of the fragrance community, always happy to see you coming up. Great that you could tune in. And Claire, lovely to see you as well. I really appreciate your presence. Nick says, OMG, on the subject of greens, I got a PDT, a Parfum de Toilette of YSLY recently. Fantastic. And I pulled out the Eau de Toilette version of EY in English. And yeah, this was actually one of the ones that started the trend of the greens early on in the 60s. And I think we have Matt there, frozen there. He is frozen in bliss. He is blissful. He has that smile and that dimple. Hopefully we get him back. I don't know what happened, but he's gone. Hopefully we'll get him back in a moment. What we'll do is we're going to take a quick intermission, as in about 30 minutes to 1 minute, and we will be right back, folks. All right, and welcome back. We have Fragrance Matt with us. It seemed that there was a bit of a technical issue and we lost him. Hopefully we will get him back very shortly. Let me just check to see if we have an update. And Rachel, unfortunately, will not be able to join us for this particular stream due to unforeseen circumstances. Everything's fine, not to be alarmed. She's not able to join us for this. We do hope that Matt can resolve his connection issue here. I'm just going to check in with him. And while we are doing that, we're just going to welcome a couple more comments here. Sweet Milk, lovely to see you. Did you know, Sweet Milk, there happens to be a fragrance called Sweet Milk? I'm not sure if you're already aware, but Joe Malone had a fragrance called Sweet Milk at one time. It's been discontinued. I just thought that might be of interest to you. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Nick S. says, I love that about Barbara Herrmann's book. She was honest when she couldn't identify notes. Very refreshing. Yeah. There are times where I think I'm smelling one thing and it turns out to be another. Or it could just very well be that I'm detecting something that, that is sort of like a trompe-l'oeil, the illusion that there's a certain note there, but it's actually 2 or 3 other accords in a fragrance that are tricking my brain to thinking it's a particular note when it's not really there. I actually have a message from Matt and I am going to listen to it privately. So I will be right back with you. We'll just make sure to just check to see if he can join us. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for your patience, folks. So Matt is currently looking for a connection and will hopefully be jumping back on when he can. And Clear says, love Vintage Y by YSL. Have strong memories of first smelling it in the 1970s as a teenager. Lucky enough to visit Paris. Very lucky. I still haven't visited Paris. We have 20 people who are tuned in right now. If you could be so kind as to click on the like button, That helps the algorithm. It helps me get more traffic to this channel, more viewership. That means a bigger and better channel for me in the future. So please hit the like button if you haven't already. And we do have the Buy Me a Coffee offer for the US only at this time. 1 cup of coffee is $5. If that's all you can afford, I completely understand that. But if you want to contribute a coffee or 2 or 3, up to 6, 6 cups gets you a sample pack. 12 cups gets you a grab bag of 4 full bottles. Those are surprise bottles. You can't request particular kinds or particular specific fragrances, but I've already done this offer a number of times with no complaints. It seems everybody has been pleased with what they received, thankfully. So that is a 4 full bottle grab bag plus a sample pack for 12 cups. And that is US only, please. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/JosephKolbP. All right. And at the moment, I'm flying solo and hoping that Matt can join us again. It's a lovely conversation that we were having there. At this time, for the 19 people who are tuned in, if you are not shy and you're willing to drop a note, let us know if there's any sort of topics that you would like to have discussed, either on future Effluvium streams or on YouTube videos. I will be doing my first YouTube video in nearly 6 months. It's actually going to be launching early November, and that will be on bucolic and agrestic scents. And you may ask yourself, bucolic and agrestic, what on earth are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about fragrance that reminds you of the countryside, of the forest undergrowth, of farms and meadows and thickets and country trails and sanctuaries, inherently outdoorsy fragrances. And that was actually a recommended topic. And I wanted to honor that because I think that's actually one of my favorite categories of fragrances that are evocative of the rawness and beauty of nature. There's some other really great topics that had come up when I asked folks for their ideas, and I'm still considering them. And I wanted to just kind of bring up some of those here. And this will be in, the upcoming weeks. I wanted to do mysterious fragrances, a video on rose fragrances, maybe a decade series at one point. Videos that focus on a particular perfumer and examples from their oeuvre that I have in my collection and I enjoy. Quiet fragrances. That was one that I was inspired by Super Deka to do a quiet fragrances video. People seem to receive very well the last live stream I did. It's Time to Spill the Tea, where I went over actually the raw materials, aroma chemicals, etc. I could continue to do that. I think I would like to actually do another stream like that and focusing on leather fragrances and all of the aroma chemicals, compounds, and natural materials that go into making different types of leather accords. A very evocative topic, death in perfumery. So that not only means like literal, suggestions of death and dying and, elegiac sort of things, but discontinuation of a fragrance, death of a brand, the death of a perfumer, niche and indie brands, that come and go. That would be an interesting one. Topics of maceration and aging was one that was suggested by one of our viewers, Pat Lester, who is a frequent viewer of Effluvium. There are a lot of beliefs going around about the idea of maceration post consumption of a product, and I want to dispel some of those myths. The idea of maceration is something that is that the consumer is expected to do after purchasing a perfume. These are not the intention of perfumers is not to have your perfume sitting around and to spray a few sprays and leave it sitting that's something we could go over as well sometime, because there's a lot of myths behind that. The green landscape. So I was thinking maybe sometime in the spring doing something like that. And perfume application. That was Philippe Alex. His composition contribution was a perfume application, atars and solid perfume, etc. And then also Jean-Claude had recommended a Serge Lutens profile. So those are some ideas for topics. I have, in fact, if you look at some of my archive videos, liturgical scents. So those are specifically incenses that do evoke liturgical, ecclesiastic sort of incenses. But I could expand upon that and look at, more Eastern sort of incense as well, and do a follow-up video on that. A florals video on freesias would be quite interesting. Now, freesia is a note that doesn't get very much love at all, I don't think. I think some people have this association with fruity florals from the 90s, but I think it's quite a lovely note. I love the smell of fresh freesias. There's one fragrance by Puiig, Effluvium, that I've wanted to sample, which centers around the freesia accord. Damp leaves on the ear is a nice scent. Yes, that's exactly what I have in mind with these agrestic and bucolic scents. I don't want to give away the examples. I want to surprise folks with the choices for that video. And Just Add Light says that agrestic is one of his favorite words. Very nice. Catch My Whiff says maceration would be a cool video. How fragrance ages is interesting too. Yes, the maturation process, which is the degradation process, which is something that anybody who is a true enthusiast of vintages has to come to terms with. You just cannot have the same expectations on an aged fragrance. It is only by pure luck that you may run across a vintage fragrance that seems to have been frozen in time. It's more often than not that fragrance has had some inevitable degradation, which is evident, particularly in its top notes. And to set aside that unfortunate reality to allow it to dry down, and then it's a whole different process with vintages. It's a different approach. You can't have those same expectations, and you have to come to terms with the fact that that degradation is going to have a negative impact on a lot of different fragrances, particularly fragrances that put a lot of emphasis on the top in heart notes. Anything that is a citrus aromatic or an herbal aromatic, if it hasn't been stored properly, that's going to be very likely to turn. I think people have a lot better luck and can tend to enjoy fragrances that are heavier chypres and heavier orientals, aka ambers, because the very base heavy notes kind of fix everything together, and there's less likely to be more obvious degradation that can be discerned from the nose. Oh, great. Yes. Yes, it is top 10 liturgical fragrances. I think you might enjoy that, Claire. Kevin Conwell. Yes, I once asked Margie and Amanda on another screen what they thought about rose fragrances for men and chocolate. Of course, they spent 30 minutes answering this. They were quite excited. They have an opinion. I have my opinions on them as well. I love rose. Rose is actually one of my top 10 favorite notes. So I could definitely flesh out a whole video of some of my favorites. So I'm just going to check quickly. I think that we may continue to fly solo here for as long as I can think of things to chat about. And then we'll close for the evening. Pardon me. Somebody had a musical video. 19 people who are tuned in right now. Once again, I'm going to go back to my usual. Click the like. And if you're so kind, buy me a coffee or 3 or 6 or 12. And yeah. So I do have, we originally were going to have focus on the topic of animalic fragrances. So I did have a bunch of them set aside. So I suppose what I could do to kind of round off this this live stream is to chat about some of those. One of them that I have here, and this was formerly L'Animal Sauvage, but it is now Carnicure. And this actually is what I had expected Musk's Kublai Khan to be like. And I was a bit let down by Musk's Kublai Khan. Actually, vintage and modern. It's a lot tamer than I expected it to be. And I'm a very big fan of Serge Lutens and Christopher Sheldrake. And I think it's nice. I don't think it's nice enough for me to get a quantity that's going to be $300, $400 nice. This fulfills my desire for a very animalic musk. And this is from Marlou Paris, Canicure. And this would be sort of a cross between, that Kiehl's musk style kind of musk, and it almost reminds me of that mid 20th century fragrance with violet in it and costus. Like I pick up a costus in this as well. So vintage heads would appreciate this as well. This I found to be eminently wearable in comparison to the other one, which is the L'Ambiguïté. I think it's a different name now, but that one to me had crossed the boundaries of what I consider to be good taste, because I love my animalics, but if there's a much more literal interpretation of what animals can excrete, I can't go there. I can't go there. I can't literally smell like urine and feces. And that's what it gives. And this one only has hints of dirtiness. Very dirty. So maybe I shouldn't say hints of dirtiness, but this isn't going to smell like you would need to be sectioned. It's much preferable to the L'Ambiguïté or whatever the new name of it is. It just should write a review on it. It just smells really dirty in a bad way, not in a perfumey way. It smells like you've soiled yourself, and it's also why I have issues with some of the indie perfumers who are just a little too infatuated with animalics. They don't understand the purpose of the animalic to lift and exalt and to flesh out and to sexualize and eroticize certain notes. They end up putting them in front of everything else, and they drown out everything else, and then it ends up being too offensive. And you can read my reviews. I'm not going to mention names of houses. I'm sure you already know what houses I have, right? But I find them to be really repulsive. There's something about having skill when incorporating animalic and skanky notes, so that they're on the precipice of being bad, but they're not, if that makes any sense. They're just sort of like on the verge of being too much, but they're not. They're reined in just enough so that you can get away with wearing those fragrances in public and not having people be concerned with you. Catch my whiffs, as animalics are a style that I'm treading lightly into, and that would be advisable, because some of them are a bit aggressive. I have a few others over here. I'm just going to go through these for the next half hour or so. We got 16 people tuned in at the moment. One of my favorites that does feature a little bit of skank, a little bit of animalic, but it isn't exceedingly so, because it is, for all intents and purposes, a vanillic amber. But L'Atelier from Miller Harris, which I actually had mentioned on my 5 that I love, 5 that I hate video from last year. This has what I perceive as a very strong costus note. And now costus out of out of all the different types of animalic notes happens to be my favorite. And costus is a botanical ingredient. Now, the botanical ingredient is really restricted, but can be reproduced in various forms through different bases that simulate it. It comes from a root, the costus root, which is native to the Indian subcontinent. And this root is really unctuous and oily and greasy and can actually produce a solvent extracted absolute. And in its pure form, it smells of scalp, of hair, of fur. There's a bit of a sebaceous quality to it, sweaty. And I find it to be the most evocative of all animalic notes. And it is featured here in Ellena. And also, give me one moment. I would have had them right next to me, but they're not. And also, Viège et Toreros from L'État d'Orange. This also has a notable costus. And the costus is married to a tuberose and leather. This is really an erotic scent to me. That's a nice one. Claire. I'm glad you appreciate my sense of humor. We'll pull out a few more. We have 13 people tuned in. This is usually what happens when I'm the only one. Well, when you talk about Bal de Versailles, Bal de Versailles is also one that has a bit of skank when it, especially in the dry down. This is very skanky amber. And this is, I think, a 90s version, hence this particular cap. Catch My Whiff asked, do you have a preferred decant, bottle style, or brand? I actually don't. Now that you mention it, I'm shopping around for one because I do want to do some decants. So I wish I could tell you. Once I find out about a good one, there are a few people who have made decants, and I need to ask them where they get their own bottles. And once I find out, I'll report back. So sort of similar in vein to L'Adrien, we have L'Ambrefade from Puiig, Paris. And this is... Yeah, this one is really... it feels furry. It smells like cat fur almost. And why on earth would somebody want to smell like cat fur? I don't know. Ask me, because I do. I don't know, because maybe I don't know. It's just something about it. Or like a fur coat or something like that. There's just something so indulgent about it. This has what I think is like some costus in it as well. It's very aldehydic in the top notes. There's almost like this cacao in it too. Cacao, ambery, lovely stuff. And I would be remiss without mentioning this juggernaut of a fragrance. This is from Eris Parfums. This is Mabette. Mabette is one of the most animalic of fragrances in my collection. But it has those florals in it as well. I love that combination of the really voluptuous white florals with a bed of skanky animalics, and you got all different kinds of stuff here. There's something that's vaguely civet-like, and there's castoreum, and this is an example. This was actually Antoine Lee, and this is an example of animalics done right, because he knew to dose them in just the correct amount so that they didn't drown out everything else. Just very well balanced. And another example, which is one of my favorite musk fragrances. This is also another one where I expected Musk's Kublai Khan to be the, to blow me away, and it turned out it was Musk Tonkin from Parfums d'Empire, Marc-Antoine Corticciato, the perfumer, or Corticciato. And if you want to take a step back in time, you can experience Musk Tonkin, because this is just epitomizes the very musky chypres of the mid 20th century. And there's a modern twist to it as well. It isn't completely antiquated smelling. It has some modern elements as well. So it's Musk Tonkin. And we had a few folks stop by. Splinter 47, any recommendations on other Jean Patou fragrances to try that may work on a man? As far as I'm concerned, every one of them would work on a man, because it's up to the man to decide if it works on them. But if you are thinking traditionally masculine accords, I do agree that Ma Liberté works wonderfully. Eau de Toilette or Eau de Parfum version. Other Jean Patou, I'm not going to mention Patou pour Homme. I just did a review on Patou pour Homme, and needless to say, I didn't get many balloons on Fragrantica. Hey, Fernando! Good to see you, my friend. Some others from Jean Patou. Oh, there's actually one that, if you enjoy Ma Liberté, this is also a lavender-centric fragrance. So if you give me one moment, it's behind me over here with some other stuff. I'll grab that one. Give me one moment. So hi, this is Moment Supreme from Jean Patou. You don't have to get a big old bottle like this. You don't have to be that freak who had to get the bigger bottle. You could try to find like one of the minis, like the Ma Collection minis. You don't have to get an older bottle. It's all lovely. This is it's a floral, musky, powdery lavender, and I think that it is definitely unisex. And that would be another recommendation of mine. That's Moment Supreme. Very nostalgic smelling to me. Catch my whiff. The most Animalic frag I have is Rogue 40 by Rogue. Now, Rogue 40, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that a reconstruction or an inspiration of Love 40 from Jean Dapré? If my memory serves me correctly, that it was his take of Love 40 from Jean Dapré. And oh, nice! Oh, the Astray of Musk Tonkin. Yeah, I have a sample of that one. Wild! Oh, what a great perfumer, Marc-Antoine Corticciato. Excellent. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought. I remember vaguely reading about it. The most Animalic one. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Tell us a little bit about it. I'll grab a few more things over here. I'll see if I got any other messages. I think that we lost. Yeah, we have officially lost Matt, sadly enough. I don't think he was able to retain a connection, but it's great that we had him for about an hour. It was a great discussion, so I'm glad that he could join us. Supply and Demand asks when I'm going to put out more videos. So funny that you ask. A little bit earlier, I was mentioning that after my 6-month break on making videos, in November, I will be making a new video, and that will be for bucolic and agrestic fragrances. Fragrances for the outdoors and the countryside. That'll be coming up in November, so just a few weeks. Some others here. We have Miss Balma, Eau de Toilette. This is like an early 90s version or late 80s, I think. This is in the same wheelhouse as your Cabochard, your Azure, etc., but this is a far more animalic and floral version of it. And I should do a proper review of it. I'm surprised that this label looks so faded. Like, I haven't had it in the sun or anything. Weird. And for fans of Christophe Le Damiel, this is Scent, Theophenol Scent. And yeah, this is a wild one. I can't wait to write up on this one. There's a whole lot going on here. This is very typical of his style that you would see in, you know, his more recent releases, where it's a lot of layers. Really, like there's a dirtiness here too. You know, there's the cumin, and you have some other dirtiness here. Coriander is an interesting note. It doesn't always make something dirty, but I feel like if coriander is juxtaposed with something that's already dirty, it makes it dirtier. And there's some, you know, vanillic, ambery elements, resinous elements as well. Those florals, lily, not lily of the valley, but lily, like Stargazer lily, Casablanca lily, Asiatic lily, very lily-ish. That's a neat one. I want to thank Fliss. You may know her from Les Odorants. She helped me procure one of these because you can't find these in the US. So she was so kind as to purchase one of them. And when she was over here in the States, she sent it to me. So I want to thank her for that. And then this is a lesser known one here. This is Roldan Bis. This was actually composed by the perfumers of Diaz and Durga, who usually I'm not really a fan of their work, but they made a pretty fantastic dirty violet fragrance here. This is like a really animalic violet, if you can believe it. Ambergris, however you want to pronounce it. I can't decide which. I even read the book on ambergris. According to the book, Floating Gold, it should be ambergris, but I still default back to ambergris, like gris in French. This is a great one too. Really unique. Knocks my socks off. Rodinbus. So yeah, I got him. I got the Animalics. I got him. I have Kiehl's Musk over here, Rocco Barocco Joint, Paco Rabanne, Tenere, Oleg Cassini. I have a whole bunch of them. But like I said, I think that I do want to write a proper review on my thoughts on Musk Scobalai Khan, because I think it is one of the greater disappointments out of my, you know, journey smelling all of the fragrances that get a lot of buzz. There's a lot of puffery around them, a lot of hype. And that's one of them where I just sort of scratched my head and said, is that all there is to it? It's not nearly as challenging as others purport it to be. To me, it is quite a mild animalic musk, quite pleasant, quite accessible. So I don't know. And then, like I said, that was like trying a vintage version and a current version, which weren't really that different from each other as well. Supply and Demand says Scent of the Day, Blue Bijou by Piotr Charensky. I think that's pronounced that way, maybe. Is it true that fragrances can't be patented? That is true. You can't patent a fragrance. But the thing is try to reconstruct it. You have gas spectrometry, gas chromatography mass spectrometry, which is also known as GCMS, where you can reconstruct to the best of your ability a proprietary formula from a perfumer. But you can't, it would be very difficult to make it exactly as that perfumer make it, because there's always going to be perfumers that have throw a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little curveball that was just going to make it hard to detect in that GCMS. And that's that's the way to do it for perfumers. Add like this little secret weapon that is hard to discern through that GCMS. So when people say that it smells exactly like the original, that might be just out of dumb luck, because most of the time it's really difficult to reconstruct. I mean, even those who are reconstructing the original formulas with all of the details there, it can be hard to do that for myriad reasons. You know, the availability of the materials, but patents, no, fragrances cannot be patented. Unfortunately, there's a lot of discussion on that too. And catch my whiff, I actually think the pissy note is part animalic, part indolic. Yeah. Well, indoles can give that effect. For those who are familiar with indoles have quite an interesting scent profile to them, where it's everything from very very floral, powdery, camphorous. Then there's like a mothball kind of. Because mothballs contain camphors that have indoles in them, and then it can go all the way down to fecal and urinous and putrescent, depending upon concentration. And Pat Lester, I was just mentioning you earlier. Hi there. I know you interviewed Christophe Ladamiel, but have you sampled anything from Strange Love or the Zoo? And if so, what is your opinion of the lines? I've only sampled 2 from the Zoo, the Everlasting and one other one, which was a citrus. And I found them quite pleasant. They didn't resonate with me personally, but I want to make the distinction that doesn't necessarily mean I didn't think they were good fragrances. I think that I wasn't connecting with those 2 particular ones, but that's certainly not to say that I wouldn't have the ability to connect with others of his, like case in point, Theophenol scent. I have not tried anything from Strangelove. I know that there's a lot of great stuff that has been said about that house. And the most animalic should be Ajmadan Oud Al-Shams. Thank you for that comment, Alex. I hope you are feeling better already, that you're on the mend. Okay. 17 people tuned in. Time is now 2:39 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. When I don't have guests, when I don't have co-hosts, it is a bit more of a challenge to keep things going. I'm like a boat without a rudder. So I might sign off from here pretty soon. I can let you know of what else is coming up pretty soon. We do have we have somebody who bought some coffees. Thank you very much to that person for buying 3 coffees. It warms my heart. I really do appreciate that. I just got that notification. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So in 2 weeks, we do have a guest. We do have another perfumer, part of our series of featuring independent perfumers and perfume house owners. So that is what we have coming up on November 9th. We have Joseph Cartana of Cartana Perfumes, Parfums, and Six Sense. And that is going to be November 9th at 3 p.m. And then we have on November 21st, Stefan Matthews and Chester Gibbs. That is at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm currently talking to a few other folks about getting some other guests in the near future. December through January and early in the next year. Where does the funk in Mazzolari Louis come from? Good question. Because that's another good example. I've tried to figure that out. I don't know if maybe there's an maybe could it be Cinerome Animalis that they use in that gives it the funk? Or it could be Shangri-La, which is a type of musk base. Because I kind of get the feeling it could be one of those Animalis, Shangri-La, maybe Tonquitone. That's a good one. It's a really good one. I like the arc of its development, because it starts off really brutal, not in a bad way, but just growl, like really animalic and ferocious and thick, dirty patchouli, head choppy almost, and then it just mellows out into this really nice, smooth, almost chocolatey, ambery patchouli, with just a little those traces of that dirty musk in the dry down. But I don't know. It could be one of those, perhaps. Yeah. I mean, it could be none of those too. Yeah. I mean, I could get it. No, I'll smell it. Hold on. I'll be right back. It's funny because there actually is, it actually kind of reminds, it's in that same ballpark as L'Adrien to a degree, and L'Ombre Fauve Pierre Guillaume. When I smell it out of the atomizer, at least, I'll spray it here. That's Mazzolari Louis. Ooh. Oh, you know what? Now that I think of it, I feel like there is a lot of cedar, like a lot of cedar wood in this. Animalis base actually uses cedar as part of the base itself. And somehow that cedar has this synergy with the other types of more animalic elements. And that's what I kind of pick up here. So you have that. I think there's the cedar, with or without it being part of Animalis or some other base, and the patchouli. So you have the synergy of the Animalis / cedar, the patchouli, the resins, and that fuzziness. It's sort of a nuzzly quality. And Animalis, of course, reproduces costus in its base. So costus is an element of it. It isn't just that, though. The base is almost like a little perfume in itself. And we're just and I'm saying this just in the assumption that Animalis is actually used in Mazzolari Louis. I could be wrong, just a theory. And that could be why I'm sort of picking up on the costus, that sebaceous, oily scalp and skin kind of costus. That to me is kind of like the ultimate your skin, but better when it dries down. 23 people tuned in. It seems like we have a few newcomers here at the home stretch of this stream. If you have just joined us, welcome. And please don't forget to hit the like button. And I do want to highlight once again, buy me a coffee. 6 cups equals a full sample pack, a generous amount of samples. I've got some good ones, got multiples of some great fragrances. And then 12 cups will get you a 4 full bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. Mind you, it's a grab bag. Can't make any requests. So you have to be willing to take the risk and get a surprise of 4 full bottles from my collection. I got to pare it down. I'm not giving you junk, though. The junk, I find ways to get rid of the junk. I'm not going to send junk. I've already done 6 of those 4 bottle grab bag offers, and people have been pleased. So that's a 4 full bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. US only, please. Unfortunately, cannot ship out of US at this time because shipping just stinks. Like, I wish I could ship to the UK, and I wish people from the UK could ship to me. Even Canada. I mean, if you send more than a certain amount of weight, it's like unreal. Unreal. I mean, you could, if you really wanted to to do that promotion and you're outside of the US, you could just buy, 12 cups if you really wanted to. I know that's a lot of money, but that will pretty much cover the cost of shipping if you were to do that. So, but I totally understand if you don't want to spend that much. Is Bruno Fazzolari on the docket for lives? You mean Bruno Fazzolari of Physotic? I haven't thought about it, but maybe that would be a good guest. He seems fascinating and probably would have a lot of great things to share with us. So maybe I could drop him a line and see if he'd like to join us in a discussion in the future. Oh, I'm glad that you're pleased with it. I'm glad that, first of all, that it arrived safely to you and that you're pleased with what I've sent to you. And like I said, it's nothing that I dislike. I like all of it. It's just when you get to the point where you're a pathological collector, like a nutty, out of control, have too much stuff, can't take it with you when you die kind of collector. It's like, I just want to be able to give stuff to other people who can enjoy it when I can't. Yep, Physotic. Yeah, first of all, I don't think I've tried enough of his work, so I'd like to familiarize myself a little bit more. I think I've sampled Umaguma. There is a Narcissus one that I've sampled, and I don't even know if I have. That could be a different house altogether, so forget about that. Did he do a fragrance with the word room in it? I almost want to say Room 222, like the old television show with the high school. I'm really dating myself there. I don't know if anybody is old enough to remember that show. But I swear he did something with a room, something or other in it, but that could be a different perfumer. Yeah, Louis is damn good. It's just too bad Mazzolari is a really, really expensive house. Not really one that I've ventured into beyond Louis. I've heard some good things about the fragrances. Some of them just seem to be like in the range of decent, but that's the real standout, Mazzolari Louis. It's kind of like a similar house to Perfumum Roma, like really solid stuff. Much of it is really linear, lots of fixatives, lots of great ingredients. Not mind blowing, but the ones that I like and appreciate really are great, like Thundra and Arso. I really enjoy the Ambra Nera, which is like the deepest, darkest, and billowiest like amber fragrance that I've ever experienced. Really dark labdanum. It's like labdanum, mostly labdanum, and just a bit of benzoin and vanilla. Room 237. He has one called Lamp Black that has I remember Lamp Black as well. I sampled that a long time ago. But, when I sampled his work, it was at a time where I wasn't really, I didn't really write any reviews, write any thoughts. It would be cool to revisit his works. And I think most importantly, I'd have to feel like I have a good vibe about his work, because it would be kind of tough for me to, I don't know, to invite a perfumer in after having assessed their work and realizing like I don't connect with any of it. So I want to make sure that that's the case before I do that. But he seems like a really cool guy, from what I've seen and heard. And it would be interesting to hear other people's suggestions for guests. I already have some ideas in mind, and some people need to get back to me. I have to finalize dates, but it wouldn't hurt to hear from any of you about who you'd like to have on this forum. And I can reach out to them and see if I can have them as a guest in one of the future live streams. More fun for my nose, yes. Oh, and then the La Nuit de Paco Rabanne over here is smelling very nice too. Tasty. Very nice. It's making my nose itch. No, I don't think that it is. I just have a tendency to have a very itchy nose. Don't know why. I think it's just more the air quality. 19 people tuned in. Out of those 19 people, if you haven't hit the like button, please do so. I'm sorry that you missed out on Matt. We had Matt for the first hour. Unfortunately, he had lost his signal and he couldn't return. But we had a great discussion. Of course, like all the Effluvium streams, this is going to be archived. So you can check that out, the first hour with our guest, Matt. Fragrance Matt, the Fragrance Matt. Rachel could not join us because of extenuating circumstances. Have I tried anything from Gather Perfumes? Now, that's a name that I've only seen come up a couple of times, and I'm not very familiar at all. Can you tell us a little bit about Gather Perfumes and why maybe it's worth looking into? Tell us about it. Hell, while you are getting ready to tell us about it, I'll look it up right here. Let's see. Gather Perfumes. It sounds very earthy, crunchy. Gather around. Gather Perfumes. Okay, I see Gather Perfume. There's one that's called Shakti. Let's see. It is a natural perfumery house headquartered in the United States. 100% natural perfume house in Western Massachusetts. So it's one of our neighbors, pretty much. Owned and operated solely by natural perfumer Ananda Wilson. And Ananda is a second-generation herbalist, forager, writer, weightlifter, mom, wife, product formulator, and former dancer and choreographer. Neataroo. Ananda began formulating botanical blends as a young teenager, as she was obsessed with smell and plant potions from a young age, collecting scented products, making scented candles, and always reading all the ingredient labels of products. Very interesting. Yeah. I do want to give a little bit more time to these 100% natural fragrance brands and discover some gems in the rough. So if you think that that's an example of one of them, I'd be willing to check them out. It's a one-woman shop, and she makes some really artisanal frags. And I can get with artisanal as long as they smell nice and they don't smell like doo-doo. Pat Lester. Has anyone suggested inviting Luca Turin? He would be a fascinating guest. Well, Luca Turin has retired from the fragrance world. He made his grandiose announcement that he is bowing out. So I think that would be a hard sell for him to jump on a little modest YouTube channel podcast kind of thingy. You know, I don't know if he would make an exception. Maybe Tanya Sanchez. I don't know if she's retired from it all. One person that I would love to get as a guest, and I actually am acquainted with her, I've talked with her in the past, is Katie Puckrick. But I have a feeling she's not really doing much in the way of fragrance stuff besides a little bit of this and that here and there. But that would be a great conversation to have. Oh, well, you know what that is. I think it's time for me to go because I don't have much else to talk about. I'm just glad that you're here tuning in. Like I said, if I'm not prepared, I am like a fish out of water if I'm alone here. And it was sad that we had to see Matt go and he couldn't join the stream again. But like I said, in 2 weeks, we're going to have Joseph Cartana at Cortana Parfums 6 Cent. He's going to be joining me and Rachel for that stream. The next material stream, I got to give it kind of like a name, you know, now that I have a theme for it. So we had the first one, which is It's Time to Spill the Tea. and that was for tea fragrances. And I went through all the different tea materials and in perfume making and gave examples. The next one that I want to do is leather. So I'm going to try to do that maybe sometime at the end of, around the end of November, maybe right in time for Thanksgiving, because nothing says Thanksgiving. No, I'm talking about U.S. Thanksgiving. I forget that I have global appeal. Nothing says Thanksgiving like leather, right? I mean, sometimes people make turkey and it's a little too leathery, and that's unfortunate. But I think I'll do that leather live stream in late November. Well, thank you very much, my friend. Once again, I'm very happy that you were pleased with your grab bag of 4 bottles in your sample pack. And that offer is still available. It is still available. I do have plenty of them. And if you just look at the pinned comment above, it'll give you more details. And until next time, folks, be well. Take care. Bye-bye now.